What time?
All right. Here we go.
30? Oh, you ready? It's on 30.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Today you're going to have the opportunity to meet Travis Norton. Now, if you're an everyday listener, you're probably thinking, who's Travis Norton? But if you're a young athlete who's hoping to play in D1 athletics, or if you're a collegiate athlete or even a coach, there's a good chance you've heard of him. Travis specializes in developing and grooming what I like to call the consummate and complete athlete. So, if you're a high school athlete and you're trying to make it and have a dream to play and do college athletics, or if you're a parent of that child who's dreaming of playing in college, maybe you're a collegiate athlete, maybe you're a professional athlete, maybe you're a coach, maybe you just love sports and being in that world. Either way, if you fall in those categories, today's episode is specifically designed for you. So, what are we going to get into today? The things we're going to cover outside of the basics, who's Travis Norton, how did Travis get to where he is today, are as follows. We're going to get into Travis's coaching beliefs as it relates to the term foundation and how it sets the stage for the complete athlete. We'll cover the components that make up a complete athlete and how they come into play once you reach the collegiate level. We're going to cover the multiple elements that need to be considered when approaching college athletics, the college athletic machine, breaking down the business and how it works, and lastly, general advice. So let's just get right into it. Travis, thanks for coming in today, man.
Thank you both for having me here. Thank you, everybody involved. You've been bringing me around. This is definitely something that I've always aspired to do. And I think I'm going to really enjoy just having this conversation and brotherhood and camaraderie as we go about this, talking about everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I think I was talking with Isaac before the show, and I think a fun place to start is really just, let's get to know Travis Norton. I'd love to know a little bit more about you, maybe your background, where you came from, your family life, and kind of, obviously you've chosen a career to serve and develop other people, right? And I'm always curious and passionate about, like, when did that start in Travis, and what was it about the makeup of Travis in his childhood that got you to where you are? So maybe let's just start at the beginning, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll go back as far as I can. That's going to be relevant to the conversation, but I would have to say it's exactly what I use with the athletes nowadays is foundation. My parents and their parents and my parents' siblings all had a great influence on me as far as like community and upholding your family standard, understanding where you came from and what was sacrificed, what was the obedience followed in order for you to already have these certain things available to you. And quite frankly, with a family full of athletes, you would think that that's what we focus on. I've had multiple cousins either play professionally or play Division 1 or Division 2 or HBCU. From extended family to close relative first and second cousins. I've had a couple of different people, but really we don't focus on that.
Yeah.
If you even come inside one of the workout areas or on the field or on the track when we're talking about athletes, we're talking about the discipline that it takes for you to accomplish a goal. So the goals are pretty much wrapped up in what we're teaching you foundationally, and whether it's sports or business or your beliefs, or how you embrace community, or how you embrace just interpersonal communication with one person. It's basically coming back to the discipline and respect that you're giving something or someone, or just what you were taught to do. You're respecting that fact and the time somebody put in. So that's pretty much the basis of where we started with me.
Yeah.
I had no inkling, no actual want to. That's not going to be a popular thing to say, to play sports. Whether it was in high school as a prep, in college, or as a professional, as a youngster, my biggest passions was nature and genetics. I was always fascinated with people's bodies, how two different people can make somebody who's 6'7" or 5'4", or somebody who has huge jump radius, or
Right.
somebody who could just be a person who's a thinking individual who's able to create ideas, whether it's fabrication with metal or whether it's designing something as an engineer, which I happen to have a couple different engineers inside my family, or if it's the ability to debate with an understanding and empathetic approach, but still stand fast on your morality. Those are things that we talked about a lot in my family. Different backgrounds, people come from different parts of the world. I've had family members who've come from the greater Antilles. I've had people who are from here, some who live in country and out of country. So you just, I don't know. I think the biggest thing you have to worry about, and what I was told, was just be disciplined, be respectful, stand fast on what you believe, and then sports just kind of ran into that.
Yeah.
I mean, to be successful in general.
Well, you said some things that like jump out at me, and the first thing is, and I know we're going to get into this, is discipline. You know, I can speak personally. You know, just as somebody who grew up in a house with a retired colonel, I know for us, discipline was not. It wasn't like do it if you want to. It was an expectation, right? And it sounds like you may have come from kind of a similar background where it was a high expectation.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiables, right? So I'm curious. I mean, you know, mom, dad, who was the enforcer in the house?
Everybody's
the enforcer.
But I will say they have parallel powers. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And
my butt remembers what that feels like.
Correct. All right. But I actually, you know, both of them believe in, if that's the necessary course. Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
For your punishment.
Right.
But mostly it was the disappointment from my father.
Okay.
And it was the lack of understanding that you would do that from my mother.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's I don't know, that's
So
too deep as a kid.
disappointment. Yeah.
So typically I was, you talk to my siblings, I wasn't a bad child. I was always very inquisitive. I loved building things.
Okay.
I would love to spend more time in the top of trees or exploring our property.
Yeah.
That was also another thing. Like, I wasn't forced into sports, but they made sure they put me in everything.
Yeah.
Whether
Exposure.
Right? And exposure with this sense of there are the safeguards. All right, obviously, I couldn't get into any and everything, but they exposed me to everything as far as like law, business, accounting, again, engineering,
Yeah.
Manual labor, whether it be from concrete to tree surgery, arbory, something my father's still into.
That's cool.
Just different things like that. But just tying it back into sports and what they taught me,
Yeah.
you got to be willing to put in the hours to understand from the base of building a platform, and you're talking about fabricating metal. You're basically doing the same thing with the human body or your story. Right? If you skip a step, something's weak. Right? Something's going to break down. If you don't understand, if somebody gives you a base already completed, or they give you a rough copy and you're just basically adding on your own intricacies, you have no idea how to reconstruct that thing once it falls apart. Where can you move to? If you have to transfer schools, if you have to relocate, if a parent dies, what did they leave you in order for you to make sure this thing happens again? And so my mom and dad were really big into telling us love is an action. And if I'm not here tomorrow, your job is to be able to carry on what I taught you.
Yeah.
So if I leave here, or if you're somewhere by yourself, you need to carry on the family legacy, but not as a pastime of somebody passing, but as a torch of how we live our life every day right now. So that was really big. And just how you carry yourself, the decisions you make, you're not doing it for yourself. There's a similar things that I do inside of here, like on the field, on the track, on the court, when I'm dealing with athletes, or just having a conversation with their parents, like whatever you're putting around them. So we talk about a lot you hear in society now, right now, it's like, it's not the house you live in, it's the neighborhood the house is in, right? It's who you're exposed to.
Yeah.
You can be living the best neighborhood in America, right? Quite frankly, the best neighborhood in Florida, Georgia, California, Texas, Arizona, it doesn't matter. It's the people that you're exposed around. If you're the best at the crop and nobody's ever pushing to be better, are you really the best?
Yeah.
If you're at the bottom of the barrel and you're in the west side or south side of some city that's huge and it has a metropolitan population, but you're around people who are forward thinking and they control most of that community, whether it be the grocery store, the corner store, the laundromat, they're entrepreneurs, they're pushing forward, they're constantly thinking of things that are happening now and what could happen, the projection. So you're talking about a business plan that you're not even understanding at that age, but it's definitely what you're running into. This is a business plan. It has nothing to do with athletics.
Yeah.
All I'm teaching right now is the business plan for life. And if it happens to run into a great career in athletics, whether, again, it be prep, whether it be college, or whether it be pro, that's what you're running into. How you develop yourself and those things that you set forward is basically what you're going to run into. Doesn't matter what arena it's in. Your personal life, it can be in your educational life, it can be in your business life, and it's most definitely going to show up when you're talking about a sports team where you have so many different personalities, creeds, and different philosophies that are coming into one to accomplish a goal,
Right.
which I hope is to win or at least be known that you were a competitor.
Yeah. Here's a question, dig a little bit deeper in terms of who Travis was at an early age, right? My question to you is, whoever's listening to this, whether it be a mom, right, or a father, or a child, it doesn't matter. This is really geared to all walks of life, because we're all athletes of life, right? We can all agree on that. You talked a lot about the instructional side and how you were raised. I want to ask you about the pressure that you endured through that process. Because I think sometimes as parents, I have 4 kids, Rick, you have kids as well.
So do I.
So sometimes it's like, okay, wait a second. I want to do this for my kids. I want to make sure this. And sometimes whoever's listening out there might even can resonate with this statement. Sometimes parents try to live their life through their child, right? So I just want to hear a little bit more about that aspect in your heart and what kind of pressure, right, that you felt or kind of endured through that process.
So I think that's a really good thing, and it's even more prevalent now. But I'm going to be honest. It wasn't really pressure because it was the norm.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, so if it's the norm, right? So if it's the norm in, let's say, Singapore or DR, for you to go to work at 8 versus 18, or for you to live with your parents, we're talking about Asian culture or Islamic culture, right? Or something like that, for you not to leave your house until you have a family already set. Or just some Caribbean families I know, they all stay together. Any walk of life, but and anybody from anywhere, I think there was no pressure because it's the norm. There were so many athletes, there were so many people who were already doing such positive things, and there were also examples of what you shouldn't do if you get success or power. So again, I think it comes back to your foundation and what you're surrounded by. So I don't think there's pressure in the sense to tie back into what your question is, because I saw it being done so often.
Yeah.
So I think the pressure would have been if I was unable to achieve those things. So I never thought I was unable to achieve those things. So there was no real pressure for me. As far as like the parent living through, to go right back into your question, that is a huge thing that is not talked about enough. Because you're going to have a child, let's talk it, brother. You're going to have a child who's great at something. They fit every stereotype, every check off, and they won't want to do what you tell them to do.
Right.
And they won't want to live that life, even if they're great at it. Their passion is something that's going to drive them. So you talked earlier, to tie you back into this, about this chose me, or I chose this profession. I don't think life is necessarily lived that way. I think you find your purpose and your passion, and I think you build everything else around it, and that's how you truly live a life fulfilled. Because no matter what you have or what you possess or what you own, if you're not really doing your purpose, you can have 10,000 kids and you love kids, but you're not doing your purpose. So you're not handling your engine that's going to drive your household. That's what I believe in as a man. Other people have other options and other things that they believe. But if I can't take care of myself and I have my passion, I'm not going to be happy, which ties back into what you said. So now I'm trying to live through my child and push my passion on them, something that I was never able to achieve. Right. So again, comes back to foundational. You were not able to have that platform enough, or the bravery enough, or your parents didn't create the space enough, or they couldn't, right? For you to dive into your purpose in order for you to move forward and be happy or not feel pressured because you're able to literally live as yourself. So I didn't really feel pressure in that sense. It was a norm for everybody to try to be the best. And we were pushed to have healthy competition.
Yeah.
Like if you're better at this and this is their time for their sport, we're all going to spend time. And guess what? We're going to go over here and support them. It's not we didn't love you enough to spend time with you during this time. This is their time. This is something that they're really good at. You're not so good at it. Their competition is today. Yours is next week. And
like that.
When you look at it that way, isn't that what we do at life?
Yeah, you know what's interesting about it is, and I know we're going to get into this, but what I'm hearing you say, so psychologically speaking, right, or like neuroscience, you are establishing neural networks in your brain when you do something repetitively, right?
Bingo.
And so what's happening, or what I'm hearing you say is, as a child, some parents focus on the push into the sport, as opposed to other parents, sounds like your parents, focused more on the fundamentals of things that are going to drive a solid human being. And that those fundamentals, whether it be discipline, whether it be high expectations, those things that became normal to you, those neural networks became solid in your brain. And, you know, you started to feel good when you were doing those things and doing them well, right?
And to add to that, which I agree with you, Rick, and as I'm listening to you, Travis, it's pretty cool. And whoever's listening out there, is the fact that you're creating patterns which create habits.
That's right.
Right? And then what I love, what I hear you say, that all of us can be encouraged by is, man, you were invited to, right? You're introduced to this opportunity that you were invited to. It wasn't forced upon you.
No.
Right.
It was an invitation for you to explore what that looks like for you, right? And then your parents coming alongside. Now, do you have siblings?
Yes.
So, how many siblings do you have?
So I have a biological sister, and I had a first cousin who stayed with us for multiple years. He recently passed last year.
Man, sorry to hear that. Yeah. So why don't we go ahead then? And I know you said earlier, you spoke of where we are right now. And actually, we've got this on video. Not everybody can always see the video. So if you're listening on audio, just so you know where we are, we're in Chaos, which is literally the physical training facility where Travis brings and grooms not just young people, but older adults. I know when we were setting up earlier, I saw somebody who's clearly got a career who needed to get their work done early. They showed up and Travis was in there getting after it with her. I was like, kind of felt bad for her. It's like when you see somebody holding a squat and it's like, all right, I want you to count 10 seconds. And the person in the squat's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, Travis is like 1.
That ain't it.
It's the longest seconds of your life.
I know.
That ain't it.
I know.
It's like, if you think 5 seconds is short, just train what time it is.
Yeah, it becomes 20 seconds. You're like, what is this clock?
Here's the most
you have?
professional way to say that ain't it.
That ain't it.
No rep.
Yeah, it's the worst sound in the world. All right. Well, so why don't we do this? Could you just let everybody out there know, what does the day in the life of Travis look like today, as far as what do you do today? Like, outside of grooming athletes, I'd love to give a list of people so that they're like, okay, I understand who Travis is and kind of how he got to where he is, but where is he? Like, what exactly is he doing right now? And then what I'd like to do is delve into the foundations.
Yeah. Let's go.
Okay. So typically I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning. Which is a long day, especially when you don't lay down until 11:30.
Oh, yeah.
So you're probably not really going to sleep until the next day anyway. So roughly about 4 to 4.5 hours of sleep, which apparently is functional because I've been doing it for some time.
It's working.
I wouldn't say it's working.
Okay.
But it has its benefits.
Become a pattern.
Hey, there you go. We just talked about that. Those foundational patterns, those neural networks.
That's right. It's what it is.
So after that, obviously, get the day going, get yourself dressed. Not every day is a quick prayer, but every day is a thank you.
Okay.
So just being, really honest. Being,
I like it, man.
Really, really raw there. Next is, get my checklist off, get ready to go out the door. I make it here. I go through my morning clients, typically 5, 6, 7, and 8. We had a short one today because I had to get over and get back to you guys. I'll leave from here. I'll go to work. I work right now doing therapy, which Isaac knows about. And I'll typically go that until like 3 or 4 p.m. I'll come back into the gym or on the field if I don't have a midday session where I lose my lunch and basically work with an athlete that wants to invest in themselves some more. So who am I to say no? And I come in here from, let's say, 3 to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
So my day is wrapped around that. Now, the average listener is listening of like, I just heard this man had kids. I heard he had a full-time career, and I understand that his business takes up the majority of his day. Where is he spending time with his spouse? Where is he spending time with his child? My child is tied into that. I make sure to talk to her on FaceTime if it's not my day to drop her off. I make sure to check on my mom and father. I might send my sister a random text, 2 or 3 times a week. But typically I'm tying them into what I'm doing, whether it's me going and picking her up from school and bringing her to the gym. So now she's seen a healthy lifestyle. She knows what I do, and she's comfortable with understanding where I am not there and how I'm providing for her. Yeah. And I'm also sending out a great foundation of how you should be healthy, mind, body, spirit, and you should put in daily deposits of that. So that's a day of me. Inside that day, obviously, I'll eat once or twice. I'll give you a good nugget. Not everybody knows about me, but it's a personal thing. I fast at the end of every month.
Okay. How many days? What are we talking here?
Typically 72 hours, just water.
I'm realizing that I just said how many days, and I'm sure somebody out there listening was like, how many hours? And you know what I mean? Like, how many days? Okay, 72 hours.
Yeah.
No, I do it on occasion as well. And I have to say, like, whenever I have a very serious decision that I have to make, like for me, prayer and fasting is one of the things I always do outside of going to like somebody who I know I can depend on to ask for good advice. And I got to tell you, man, 3 days is when I really start to feel mental clarity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of accountability, right? And the group you were talking about earlier on, I heard this an interview with this. He's since passed away, Nipsey.
Yep.
He made a statement that since then it's stuck with me, and it's if you have a circle that doesn't push you and encourage you, right? If you have a circle that does not do that, you don't have a circle. You have a cage.
Seriously.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a reminder of like, hey, I'm bringing in my child. I'm bringing in my family. And that's the thing is I think oftentimes we forget that the most successful people in the world, one of the things that we all have in common is that we share 24 hours in one day.
Yeah.
How do we use that?
That's right.
Yeah.
How do we use that?
How do you prioritize?
I just said to my wife the other day, I had a lot that I needed to do that day, and 4:30 rolled around, and I was awake. So I just got up and started my day. And she looked at me and she's like, man, I feel like you got a lot done today. And I was like, well, if you've got a lot to get done and you only have so much time, get up earlier.
Yeah,
it's like, it's the only option you have.
Yeah. I had a mentor that did that, a coach that told me, we would say in my younger years, I don't have, and I don't know how I can do this. And he just looked at us and he's like, really? I go, yeah. And he goes, just get up earlier.
Yeah, just do it.
Just get up earlier.
That's literally that.
I told it to my 14-year-old the other day, and she's like, I don't think I can do that. I'm like, nope. Got to create those habits.
There's a book. It's called "It Takes What It Takes." The author passed, and it broke my heart to hear that. But it's phenomenal. So if you're out there and you haven't read it, I highly encourage that you read it. But it's a lot about that. It's a lot about setting habits. It's a lot about how you receive information, right? Like if you look at me and you're like, Rick, I need you to get up and show up at 4 a.m. Like I can sit there and get a bunch of anxiety about it and go into fight or flight mode, or I can accept it as takes what it takes. It's what it is. I'm not going to sit here and get upset about it. I'm going to just set my clock, move through the actions of what needs to happen, get out of bed. When I feel tired, maybe I tell myself it sucks, but I'm going to get out of bed and just keep moving. And just remember that phrase, right? Like it takes what it takes. Go ahead.
I was going to say, here's a good question for you to help connect to the listeners, right? What would you say, or how would you say your past experience as a young athlete prepared you to what you're doing today?
We talking like prep or college?
All of it, right? Because I would say that you put in certain patterns and certain habits, right? And
Absolutely.
And how here you are having this, what maybe some people might consider a long day, right?
Which is so normal.
It is normal, right? You're in the norm. So can you help us connect the data? How did that prepare you to what you're doing today?
So I think you both hit on great points that actually run parallel to each other and let's kind of crash into each other at the end. All right, so the book, It Takes What It Takes, I was just gifted that by one of my clients who's a doctor here in town. He knows I like to read a lot in my time. Obviously, people are like, how do you have time to do that?
Correct, yeah.
All right, but on the weekends or when I can't sleep or as I'm just reading, as I don't have a lunch, I like to just thumb through stuff. I like to read. I like paper. I like to feel what the author is doing. So I'm a big feel guy. Like I want to feel how he wrote the page. I don't want to read it digitally. I don't want to hear it audibly. I want to actually turn the page. Like I'm
you like
reading
having
your
it in
thoughts.
the hand.
I have your thoughts in my hand, and they can tip. I can feel that vestibularly. I can feel it in my mind and my body. But to tie that back in, it takes what it takes. I don't understand anxiety when you're the one that controls that.
Come on,
anxiety.
You're putting yourself in the
because
cage.
anxiety comes from the lack of preparation. So if you are the one that controls when you wake up, it's not like you controlling what the teacher has on a test, or they didn't give you a rubric, or it's just a pop quiz. This is the test that you go through every single morning that you are gifted the gift of life. So for you to say, I can't wake up or I have anxiety about showing up, I have anxiety about having something. So if you have to show up with a certain product, but you have the product, why do you have anxiety for it? You already have the product.
Yeah, I think what it is though, because I spent a lot of time processing this, right? I am a incredibly disciplined individual, and there's pros and cons to that, right?
Yes.
So here's the best way I can articulate the way I feel sometimes is I am the cage maker. So like I build this cage, right, of these rules that I live within, and they are healthy, right? But sometimes when I'm in that cage that I built of kind of discipline, I start to feel trapped within the own cage that I have because everyone else is out doing what they're doing and they're having a good time and I'm getting results and I feel good. But there are times where maybe it's just a weak moment, you know, maybe I just need one of those fasting, like mental refreshes. But it's like I'm sitting there and I'm just like, man, I am like the creator of this cage. I can open the door anytime I want, yet here I sit.
And you're not going to.
I'm not going to. I won't let myself out. And that's the difference, you know? I mean, that's a different component of a human being that maybe goes back to what you're saying around those foundations, which I really want to get into because I know that's a key component of your belief system around coaching is that you coach foundations first. And I know a lot of people hear that. And maybe what you're thinking is the appropriate way to squat. And that is not what we're talking about here. So like maybe you could delve into that concept, the foundations, and really talk with us. Like, what does that mean to you? What does it mean for an athlete?
So I would say foundation are the steps that you're going to do to accomplish a goal. So if you look at the squat goal, or you look at a 1,000-yard rusher goal, if you look at a 12-point basketball goal, you look at I'm going to have 25 digs if we're talking about volleyball, right? So I think your foundation is what you're doing to accomplish those steps, if we're just talking just that. So if, like you said, you have a system of habit. I woke up earlier than I normally do, and my wife looked at me. So if you want to phrase your question again, what was it, Mr. Isaac?
Connecting the dots.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So if we're connecting the dots, these are the things that I'm accomplishing goals with. I think that ties right back into the foundation is my steps that I want to accomplish everything within. I prep it, right? I plan it, I execute it, I review it, and then I present a final product. So that's typically what we do. I think that's the foundation.
Yeah.
I don't think you were talking about, I set the bar here, I put my hands here,
Right.
I squat with my feet this far
routine
apart.
that you go through.
That's a routine.
That's right.
And that's just like movement. If you had movement, that's one thing. If you're moving forward in life, that's another. There's a phrase or a clip that's going around the internet. You can run on a treadmill really fast and never go anywhere.
Yeah. That is.
And you see that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? If people wake up, they do the same routine, they go to sleep, and what do they actually accomplish?
Nothing.
Not
It's like the
saying that
Truman
they
Show.
maintain.
It's like the Truman Show.
Absolutely.
Running that route every day.
And
Same
it's
thing.
run over every day.
Yeah.
Every single day that thing is running. So if we're talking about foundation, your foundation should be something that's either pushing you forward or pushing you through. Now let's dive into that.
Come on.
So if you're pushing forward, you're accomplishing goals and you're accomplishing things that get you acknowledgement and what? Recognition. If you're pushing through, I have to get back to a stable ground. If we're just talking about that, like this is an unstable ground. But my foundation is going to help me get back to unstable ground so I can push through. There are going to come times that something's going to happen with these children. There's something going to happen with these young adults. Quite frankly, you as men that lead your families, there's something going to happen. So if we're talking about something that's foundational, what are you going to have that's steadfast when the troubled water comes? What do you have that when you have success? I think me and you talked off show and off air about when you have success, typically is when you're going to have that foundation the most, because you're held to such a high standard and accountability level. That foundation is going to be the thing that pushes you forward. So again, if we go back to the foundation, what is foundation? Foundation is basically my set of rules that help me get through whatever life throws at me. So whether it be sprinting, I have a rule for how I'm lining up and how I'm going to push and how I'm going to go about this. If the distance is greater, if the distance is shorter, I'm going to adjust the rule. But the rule is still the rule. I'm going to make it adaptable. So if we're talking about intelligence, EQ, IQ, however you want to focus it, right? You have to be able to adapt your foundations to whatever life throws at you. And the people who cannot do that typically stay the same, but they're not really. And we all three know at this table, they're falling behind.
Now, on foundations and what have you, I want to go a little bit back because I think for all our listeners and viewers, this is going to be really key. I believe so. We talked about stress, anxiety, right, and all that. And so I am a chiropractor, and one thing I always talk to my team about is, the very top bone in the spine is called the atlas. So I always tell them that the first adjustment needs to happen above the atlas, which is your brain, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to help us connect the dots here as well is saying, there's that mental part where I feel as well, and what I've known is if you can't adapt to the changes that are going around you, the inability able to adapt to that, I really believe creates that pressure, right? And I've read over, and you can chime in here on this part where I've read over about the fact that oftentimes there's research that supports that your mind actually gives out before your body does, right? And can you elaborate a little bit more on
the way it always feels to me.
The what?
That's the way it always feels to me.
So you always hear the coaches yell out, your body will die before your mind will, right? Quite frankly, no. Yeah. Your mind will tell you to stop this. To slow down.
That's right.
Before your body will actually die. And if you're still feeling pain, if you're still feeling like I've pushed myself to the limit, you still have a chance. Your body's still going. I think I touched in on that. So if you tie back into your question, man, I think, I don't know, man. I just think your foundation pushes you through all that stuff. And my foundation is so set. Why am I having anxiety?
But the mental aspect.
Yeah, the mental aspect. I made that decision.
There we go.
To use my foundation.
You showed up.
I showed up,
right?
and my mind was already. So there's a part that's, in some text that says a well made up mind. If you show up with a well made up mind, right? The person with a well made up mind is gonna use that foundation no matter what comes about.
So maybe what we could do here is, because if you're listening to this, you're hearing us talk a lot, and what I'm hearing, just to kind of summarize real quick, is if you're developing out somebody that's young, right, the most important thing is, okay, you got to practice more baseball. The most important, isn't that you need to practice more baseball, that you need to practice more football. The most important thing is discipline, consistency, determination, finish what you start. All those core components that are foundational, maybe that's a right way to tie it back to the word foundation. And then what happens is once you've developed that foundation, because you said this to me the other day, like once you're about 13 years old, those habits are set. Yeah. And the issue is, and I know there's a lot of science that backs this up, guys. I don't have the stats with me. I could ask Mike, but you could look up Mike and just say, like, how old are you when your brain, because I think it's from like 3 to 5 is when your brain, it was really developing, right? And then after that, it slows down significantly. And that's like your window of time to really hit these habits, these foundations. And what I want to get into is, if you're listening to this as an athlete, if you're listening to this as a coach or somebody who's trying to guide a child, wherever you are on your journey in life, like the goal is to create, as Isaac would say, like a life athlete. And another way, if you're in athletics, you might consider them like the consummate and complete athlete, just kind of depending on maybe what lens you're wearing. But there are elements that make up that complete athlete. They're mental, they're physical, they're spiritual, so on and so forth. And those are going to come into play once you get to the collegiate level. What might you say about those elements and kind of how they play into a person's success or sustainability within the program?
So the reason why I said the consummate athlete is just what you said. Why would you practice more baseball? Why would you go out there and practice your start? Why would you practice your free throw? Why would you practice your off-tempo pass? Why would you practice your dual match if you're on the tennis court? Your discipline and your habits and your foundation tell you to.
That's right.
Doesn't matter. That's what you chose to do. That was your choice for that day. So you're going to use those things to go right back into that. So if you know this is the thing I need to do in order for me to hit better. You didn't go out there because you're trying to hit better. Your discipline told you, I need to hit better. So this is the way I need to practice more. My habits say the greatest teacher is repetition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go out there because my discipline says I need this, right? The goal I'm trying to achieve or the pat on the back that I want to receive is tied into backboarding my foundation and what I'm going to do every day, the discipline to do those things. So yes, I know I need to hit more, but why would I go hit more? Because if I hit a home run, and I bring in 3 runs, my average is still going to go up.
Right.
If I get a ground ball, it's going to go up. Why would I go out there and hit more? I'm already having success. So again, you can have crazy success, and your discipline is still off.
And you know what I hear you say, Travis, over and over too, is I envision this again. So I have a 14-year-old, I have an 11-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And then yesterday, as my 8-year-old, we were in baseball practice, I was throwing the ball with my 6-year-old. But my 6-year-old was throwing the ball about 45 to 50 yards, right? And it wasn't always accurate, but he was launching his thing. And he was going. But then I looked at, as I got in my truck and I was talking to a buddy of mine over the phone, I look at my truck and I have a baseball glove that I carry in my truck. And so where we're waiting, we're just playing. Because I realized he's never played baseball in his life. He's never he's never got coached by it. And so what I hear you say, which is really encouraging to me, and maybe you're a parent out there and you're trying to figure out, maybe you're frustrated because you're not seeing the energy or the fire in your child. I think the biggest thing, and what I'm encouraging you as well, what you've shared with your story, is that there's invitation, right? And there's consistency. And I think if we're all parents, we can agree that that C word is really important in creating
consistency and participation.
Yes.
Well, not
just that.
And not to mention like just the valuable time spent between you and your child doing something that maybe they're passionate about, not that you're passionate about, that maybe they're passionate about. And that gets into, I had brought up, when I was chatting with Travis the other day, the Netflix just had a new documentary that came out. I think it's called Winning. I can't remember, but they interview all these athletes. They interview Wayne Gretzky, I think Michael Jordan, the list goes on. And the question was to all these athletes, like, did you just play this sport your whole life, right? Like, this is what you started playing. You were born with a hockey stick in your hand. And Wayne Gretzky was like, no, man, I actually did Taekwondo. Or like, but his point was it was consistency of being passionate about something and seeing it through. Using your body, being athletic, spatial awareness, all the other things that come along with it, we're just developing because of the fundamentals and the foundations. So it's like super cool when you think about it. We're sitting here talking to somebody who develops collegiate and pro athletes. We're really not talking much about sports, are we?
Nope. We're talking about life.
We're just talking about life.
You're talking about the human being inside of it.
Right.
Or the unassuming man.
So, and I know we're going to get into the unassuming man, but I just want to ask you guys, like, Travis, you've been closer to this than us, and I know there are a lot of people out there who are listening who are athletes and in the programs. What happens when an athlete shows up at the collegiate level and they don't have this discipline. Like for the parents that are listening that really need this to set in, what's the consequence?
What's the consequence of somebody passing a driver's test and then getting the keys to a Ferrari?
Yeah.
Yeah. As a
No bueno.
Ain't gonna
It's
be
not
good.
good.
Brother.
Just I want to be clear. That's a Spanish phrase for not good.
Ain't gonna be good, brother. Right? So you can have the ability to do something, but the know-how and know when to, right, is going to be whether you're going to be successful in navigating that car through traffic on an open road or on a closed track. The same with athletics in college. So if we're finally going to talk about sports and you show up without these discipline things, you're going to get redshirted. You're going to get a warning.
Right.
Your warning shot was you need to focus in. You need to understand this sport. You need to tie it back into what we do. Techniques and just basically how you're moving around is not what we want to see and not conducive to us being productive and you being a part of the production on this team. So you're going to show up ill-prepared to utilize whatever tools
That's right.
you were gifted, right? Because you were not there. It's not really even your right to say that, I created this, right? That was a gift. Right, and everybody's born with them, different ones.
You're a steward of it.
You're a steward of it, right? The prodigal son,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna get there. You're not gonna have success, or you're gonna have success. I mean, you talked about this off air earlier. You're gonna have success, but it's gonna be fleeting because somebody else is gonna have a plan, and they're gonna understand that you only have this one trick pony that you show up with, and that's all you have. You have no punch. You have no second punch, no second go-to, no second move. Once we figure out what you've done, you never had a chance to build a foundation, have discipline, have steps or checks in place if something else goes wrong, or an ability to have a mind that's able to move around objects, right? Make adjustments.
I was going to say, to tie it back to your earlier comment, you can't handle the pressure.
Right.
Because and I think too, as we're talking about this, and what's coming to my mind is the importance or the value, I would say, the value of making sure that your child's not just focused on one thing.
Yep.
Right. I think there's value on diversification, like diversifying the sports that your child is being introduced to, because it trains in different ways. That I was I'm a Giants fan, but.
That could go over really bad.
This is really bad.
Go good and bad.
No, that's like really bad this last week. I mean,
but if you're a historian,
I'm a historian. But
hey, you could be living in the past and use it for the future.
That's right. But I'm telling you, this last game was not good. It was really bad. They shut us out. The Cowboys shut us out. But I was reading about one of the athletes there that was continuing to give our quarter. I say ours, but give the Giants pressure right over and over. And this was pretty neat. So he is a football player. He realized that he has to get through a line, and there's so many things that are happening between him and the quarterback. And so what he did off season, which was pretty neat, he picked up boxing.
Yeah.
Not to defend himself, but to learn the art and the different techniques, footwork and hand. Yeah. Right? How can I get through this line to get to where I need to get at?
Foundations.
Yeah.
Right? And
Anxiety.
also explain, yes.
What's the anxiety part of that? So let's dive into that. The anxiety part of that is I have an antagonist, the O-line, right, trying to stop me from getting to the prize, quarterback, ball carrier.
Oh, there you go.
So my anxiety is, how do I get to him when I know they're there? The part of the success story is I took the time to get the answer.
That's right.
All right. The rubric.
Gosh, come on.
In order for me to utilize that so I can, so I know the problem's coming. I won't take the time to build something in order to take care of the problem, neutralize the problem, have success through the problem. The O-line's a problem. If I never develop talents, I never develop systematic habits to check off, okay, speed rush didn't work, power rush didn't work, spin move didn't work, but he sucks at the rip. He can't dip low enough. He's 6'7", he can't bend. I just went through a whole list of everything. I have no anxiety. I just have to go down the list until something works.
Come on.
Well, so there's an equation for that if you're listening. There's a book called The Inner Game of Golf. And conceptually, like what the guy says is he says P equals P minus I. And if you know me, you hear me say this all the time, but I believe it. Performance equals potential minus interference. So, desired performance is the quarterback, as you said, kind of in your analogy, right? Potential is me. minus the interference. The interference is that anxiety, right? It's what I have to know or what I don't know. And if I can get that interference out of my life, I can maximize my potential and achieve performance. So like, if you're looking for an easy way to kind of remember that concept that Travis just put out there, remember that P equals P minus I. And if you're not sure how to remember it, look up that book, The Inner Game of Golf. It's not really, it's like this conversation. Is it about sports? Kind of, but not really. Is the book about golf? Kind of, or not really. It's really about self-correcting principles. And I would encourage you to look into it. I know, like you guys heard earlier, how insane Travis's schedule is, and we've been lucky to get him for the time we have. So I definitely want to get into the unassuming man, because I know that's an important principle. And I know there's some other principles that maybe you might want to walk to, like first-generation athlete versus multi-generation athlete. Things that people that are on the outside looking in might not see, like the positive and negative or unintended consequences of being selected to be a collegiate athlete. How are your peers going to treat you? Or what Travis would coin the 24-hour day, right? Which you become a full-time employee. So I think there's a lot of nuggets here that Travis, if you don't mind delving into. These are things that people aren't going to tell you, because you've experienced it. And I know, like my brother-in-law who's awesome and such a good friend of mine, like Matt Olinger, he's over at Virginia Tech. We talked about him. He's probably going to chuckle when he hears you say these things, because he's dealing with these young athletes every day.
And nothing has to do with sports.
Right? So maybe if you don't mind, could you just dig into the ones that you really are passionate about?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that we're just now getting into sports. So some of the biggest things that you're going to have to deal with when you're talking about having success. So let's just say you get a scholarship.
Okay.
Let's just start from there. You get a scholarship, or you have success in high school. You've now become one of three that have a possibility to go to college, right? If we're just talking just a football level, right? Let's just say the number one thing in the South, football. Okay, right? Okay. You're now expected to have success every time. So if you don't have any checkoffs, right? How do you continue to have success? All right, let's talk about another one. How are your peers going to look at you? You're no longer just a peer. You're the person that's supposed to lead them in a battle. We're depending on you if something needs to happen and a game-changing play needs to come. You're the person that's supposed to do it. All right, let's look at it from another standpoint. You've now uphold the highest standard on that team for that team. As in, like, the team that's across your chest and the team across your back are now expecting you to carry a certain level, whether you're with the jersey, without the jersey. Somebody knows your last name but doesn't have your last name. All right. So then we're talking about success on the field, right? We're talking about recruiters. Recruiters expect you either to duplicate with something that you've already done or exceed it. All right. And then you also have to tie in, how do you handle the social stuff now? Am I the same kid? Not the same teammate. Am I the same kid? Am I the same young man? Am I the same young woman?
But people won't look at you like you are.
At all.
Because they're going to know who you are.
And they expect you to do what? They expect you to live to the expectation of what they see, what they know of you. Not the human being, not the adolescent, not the teenager, not the young man, not the young woman. They expect you to be exactly what they see, the phenom. And you have to be okay to live with that. So the biggest anxiety is not being prepared. That's not actually what you're going to deal with, because if you're prepared for all of it, it's not really anxiety. You knew it was coming. It's when we try to shield people from the truth. It's going to be hard. You're no longer going to be looked at as a normal human being or a normal person, a normal teenager. That life is gone. And when you try to take that away from them, this is one of the biggest things. When you try to take that away from them, the truth is you'll never be looked at the same.
And then you got the outside, right, influences, and it reminds me of the story of Jordan Travis for State. It's a really neat story, right? He got to a point where he started listening to everything that the people were saying about him on social media. So what did he do? He went up to his coach. He went up to Coach Norvell, and actually attempted to quit. And he told Coach, he said, "Hey, I want to go to a different room. I want to go to the receiver room." And the story goes that Norvell walked him to the trophy area, the Heisman Trophy area, and he looked at him. He said, "I believe that you can end up here as well." And look at Jordan Travis now.
Yeah. Look at last year.
Look at last year.
Just after that conversation.
Yeah.
So I think those are the biggest things you're gonna face. But that's just as a high schooler.
This is before it even gets real.
Before it even get real. That's before you even sign the scholarship.
Yeah, Michael and I were talking. It's like you could Google if you wanted to, and we could look up a myriad of things that have happened in the news where athletes have gotten into trouble. And sometimes, I don't know that they even did anything. Or maybe it was just somebody gave
Being
them something.
present.
They were just there, right? I mean, and sometimes maybe they did, but the moral of the story is perception is reality.
Correct.
And now that's the world that you're living in. And if you came from some small town, and you're in the big leagues, it could be. I have to imagine it could be eye-opening.
Let me ask you this: what's the difference of you getting promotion inside your job that you were just a temp worker in, and you just passed your graduate school stuff, right? Or you're now a doctor, right? And we were talking about this earlier off show. You're now supposed to carry the life characteristics of what a doctor is embodied. And you just went from student, temp worker, to now full-fledged doctor. And I expect you to have 40 years of experience of how to carry yourself.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. Let's dive not been to a high school or a college student. You still want to be a kid. Or you still want to experience your young adulthood. How do you go out? How do you go to the mall? How do you go to the movies?
Right. People are watching.
Not even that. Who do you be around? Who understands you? So now you can only hang out with people who either have just as much to lose in a different setting or a different genre, or the ones that are doing exactly what you're doing, which is probably going to be rare because remember, you're one of three, especially if you're a high level athlete, right? If you're a 4-star, 5-star, if you're a top 100 girl in basketball, if you're a top 150 girl in volleyball, right? If you're on the amateur circuit, for golf or for tennis or something like that, or Olympic sport, right? You're running as a national competitor in track. Like, who you around? How are you going to be able to handle that? Like, so I think if you take that away from the child, right, or you take that away from the adolescent, the kid, however you want to phrase it, the young adult, you're stealing the joy that's going to come from all the stuff they're going to accomplish, right? So the more I achieve, the heavier that coat gets. But you never prepared them.
So let me ask you this question, Travis, because last year we saw Oklahoma in softball.
Yeah.
They won the World Series, as it was considered.
We can say that. Yeah.
But in the interviews, what I did see, what I loved about it, was that they were asked about the trying times. How do they reset? Right. So they fail. How were they able to bounce back up? In their case, they're believers. And so they, in the interview, full press interview, they said they all came into agreement that when they mess up on a play, they'll remind themselves by signaling to each other, "Hey, keep your eyes on Jesus." Like that was their agreement.
That's their thing.
That was their thing. Can you speak to those times because you didn't achieve success overnight, right?
No.
You weren't like, "Hey, I'm running a 4.2 on my 40," right off the bat. I don't know what you ran a 40 in, but I do want to.
It's alleged that I ran 4.2.
They what now?
It's alleged that I ran 4.2.
Nice. Okay, so I want you to speak a little bit into that. What do you do when you do fail along the way, right? Or what do you? And I understand the mindset of failure's not an option. I work that way. I tell my kids often, it's like, we don't have a plan B. Plan A is just to do it.
Right.
But there is that mental and there is that consistency of like, okay, there might be a slight doubt. And everybody who's listening or watching are not in the same position.
So
right?
I will say that. I will say we do have a standard in here, but I'm going to tie that back in. I think failure is the option. I think you can see it and know that that's not what you want to do. And I think you watch other people fail. And I think you fail yourself when you're talking about in control, not when you're working on somebody on the table and realigning their back or their knee or whatever you're doing, right? Or they just had a broken foot and you're trying to get them back right. I think that you failed inside the preparation of school. So now you understood what not to do. And I think the failure runs you into this. I was a failed athlete. That's why I'm a coach.
It's an interesting.
So if you look at it that way,
if
you look at it that way, a retired athlete is somebody who started to fail.
Yeah.
And we're all going to be a retired athlete at some point. And I think that's another thing that they don't understand. This is your ride along this car.
Yeah.
Somebody else was in this car before you. You got the upgraded model, the new year. You got every perk. You got everything that comes with it, right? And it's just your turn.
Come on.
Well, so you know what's interesting about what you just said is I'm thinking about what most athletes aren't thinking about, and that's the long game, right? Like what they see is the prize. And let's just say as a collegiate athlete, let's say you're in football, the prize to you maybe is the playing in the pros, and then maybe like, oh, one day I could play in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Nobody's thinking beyond that.
No.
Right.
What are you going to do with that?
Well, and where the foundations come back into play, and this is what I heard you say earlier. That's what gives you the wherewithal when failure happens. And if we could just honestly say that if playing is success, at some point you're going to retire, and we can agree that maybe that's what failure looks like, then what I would say is okay, you're going to need that foundation in order to kind of move everything forward after failure.
And to get back going, he's looking at my post ACL 40 time. Okay. What does that thing say, Isaac?
4.35.
Okay, thank you.
He's like, I got it.
Yeah, hold on. That's what I call humble boast.
So
that's a humble boast.
Listen, I know you've given us a lot of time, and I'm trying to be sensitive to your time. I know we're getting towards the end of like what you have available. There's one thing I do want you to talk about, because I think parents out there need to understand this, and it could be helpful just in coaching their children. The 24-hour day and how that can lead to binging. Like in your mind, like help somebody understand what does the day in life of an actual collegiate athlete look like?
So can we talk about what's important to you and your family and your kid?
Sure.
Yeah.
Devin Booker has a clip out there, right? It's on several different motivational
platforms.
Well, it's on the Instagram, right? And it's on different ones. And he talks about how his summers were spent driving over to Birmingham, right, to work on his AAU. He said, I didn't have time to hang out with my friends. He said, I probably spent one weekend every other month hanging out, just being a regular kid, because my focus was to obtain a certain goal. So if you're talking about time spent in a day, what's really important to you guys? They talked about, I forgot the Olympian's name. She was a figure skater. And they were like, oh, you missed your childhood. You missed all the movies and hanging out with your friends and going to the arcade and eating pizza. She said, what did I really miss? She said, every one of those movies I missed, I probably saw at the place that they were produced. Paris, Maldives, Japan.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And she's like, I got to travel the world as a child, experience everything on experience, and all the time I put in was given back to me in experiences. Those experiences of going to the same movie theater might seem so grand and big until you visit the world, and the world is huge. So the 24 hours is huge, right? Every day we get those 24 hours. Or you might not get those 24 hours, but you had the one before because you made it to this day, right? So if you're talking about what's important to you, it's not a binge or a burnout in that sense. It's what's the most important thing that you guys are trying to accomplish. And you go back to accomplish, if you got to accomplish something, you need goals. You need goals, you need discipline to achieve those goals, right? But you have to have a check off in order to get those goals,
right?
To achieve, right? So I think people need to analyze what's really important. Because the only reason why you're burned out is because you're trying to pursue something that you really don't want to do.
Yeah, that's actually
value.
really
The
good
value of it, right? The value of it is I'm missing out on these things, but I say I want this thing because it's going to come with a monetary gain. It's going to come with a power gain. It's going to come with some type of play that's going to push me here. But it's burning me out because I can't do these things. These things matter to me more.
And I want to just put this in there is the why, right? Because I think that's even going back to the interview of the Oklahoma softball team. One of them, the year before that, they also won the championship.
Yep.
And then the reporter asked them, and they said, yeah, I won the championship, but the next day I felt emptied again, right? So much what you're saying, it's like, hey, yes, you could do this, right? The value that you have, but let's take it as a parent, and you're investing in your child. That's what it is. It's an investment into your child's life.
Yeah.
What are we setting them up for with the big why of why you're doing it? So that way, these monetary things are temporary pleasures. Right? Yep. Great. We get excited.
NIL.
Right? And then what?
NIL.
Yeah.
That's a temporary thing. Now, you can string it out for however many years you're in college. If they don't go ahead, move on from you and bring in a newer, fresher blood, newer model. Yeah. It's their time to ride the car. Right? But eventually, if that's all you had and you had nothing else, what do you really have?
The flash in the pan.
Bingo.
Yeah.
It's a spark fire. It's a flash across the sky as a lightning strikes. You're a lightning strike in a bottle, and that bottle ain't meant to contain that lightning strike.
You know, they say values drive beliefs, beliefs drive behaviors, right? And I think what you're saying, Isaac, is like that value system, if as a parent or as a steward of another life that I'm watching over, if I'm setting that value system, these other things, they're going to figure it out. And they're more likely to figure it out in a healthy way as long as they've had that consistency, the discipline, the heart, the love over time, and that value system is set. Their belief system is going to be fairly set at that point too. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Yeah. I guess the last thing I'd like to ask you, and just, I think it's something that we should always try to end these types of conversations with, is it's for you, and it's the best open-ended question I know. What else?
What else? All right. So let's find the next athlete. Let's get them prepared. Let's fix their body. Let's teach them how to interact with people. Let's teach them how to be a business of themselves. Let's teach them how to utilize social media as a platform to use as a business card. Each one of those. Let's teach them how to sell themselves. Let's teach them how to be a steward of a company. Yeah. As in, I want to be sponsored by them, NIL. Yeah. Let's teach them how to be a professional. My next thing is the next step. The next step is either college or beyond. That's my greatest aspiration. I've already done it once in track. I had a chance to be a sprint coach at a university, actually. It went very well. They got to the conference championship. So I think the next thing for me is, how do I level up?
Okay.
So the next level up is my thing. And if we're tying that back into sports, which is what this originally was going to be about, but obviously we're talking about foundation gets you everything you want inside of sports. I think we sum that up better than me saying the day-to-day rigors I put these kids through is this, and this. And all I told you was a physical. We talked about everything but the physical, but you can see the physical.
Yeah. Here, do you have a life motto?
Parents.
Do you have a slogan that you go off because we talk about our bodies, and of course we talked about our kids, investing in kids, but
no one cares.
that's accurate.
You're laughing, but I'm dead serious.
I'm not laughing. No, this is not laughing
serious.
at. Laughing with,
I know. And everybody does that. I tell all my clients that's not my problem. I tell the students nobody cares, and I care the ones that are already living it. That's your burden to carry. Because success is burden. It's not always a platform.
Yeah.
When your success, people are going to expect you to carry yourself like you're a successful person. Not the 22-year-old, not the 13-year-old, not the 6-year-old. So no matter what your level is, from popcorn to pee-wee to pro, and you're all pro, that success comes with a burden. Just like the most phenomenal body, right? Just like the greatest athlete, just like the greatest mind. Those things come with a price. And if we're going to end this off, that price is about the community and how you interact with it. It's about the responsibilities and the rigors that you're taught from the discipline of your household and the people that you grew up under, right? And the name on the front and the name on the back. And once you learn how to be a professional about life, you'll be a professional in sports, no matter what your level you achieve. So that's what I teach in here.
Yeah.
So if we're really talking about sports, it's so much more. That's why we had so much success. Like if you look at the list of schools that I have helped kids that are already at that school or get to that school, it looks crazy. And in a 9-year period, how are you dealing with, if I can name drop, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Oklahoma, USC, Stanford, Hawaii, Texas, USF, UCF, right? How are you dealing with all these different schools? Penn State, right? Traditional or non-traditional, right? I haven't had the pleasure of being back up to Notre Dame since I left from around that area going to Louisville, right? But that's another one of my things. I want to get to places that uphold the higher standard, like Stanford or like Notre Dame or like Brown or like Harvard. What comes with the mind and still have athletics? So can we do that on the prep level and on the level that we train? Once you do it on that level and you're professional in how you train, how can you not get to the highest level of professionalism for you? whether it's the weekend warrior, whether it's the high school phenom, whether it's the college superstar, the college teammate that never happened, that never made it, always was hurt, but was the greatest person, who now becomes the most successful CEO, the most successful person who's in the front office of an NFL team or in a NFL team or NBA team, right? There's so many different avenues, but all those things tie back into my discipline, my habits, how to interact with people, like how I respect people, and just waking up with the rigors of stress, anxiety. That's nothing. Nobody cares.
Well, I think we can end it with that. I kind of messed up for the listeners out there. If you can't see, I'm holding a bottle of the Old G. My brother-in-law, Pete Ibrahim, and his business partner created this liquor brand, and it's gin, and he rolled it out. But I was thinking it'd be a good gift, and as it turns out, Travis doesn't drink.
I've never drank.
So the deal is, if you know Travis and you're listening to this,
I think I'm a G.
You're about to get gifted something from Travis, most likely. But listen, either way, it's the thought that counts.
Hey, thank you both.
This is from us to you.
Hey, I really appreciate this. This has been so fun. I know some people are going to be disappointed that we didn't dive into, this dude's coached 5 stars, he's 4 stars, he's got people in girls basketball, guys track. We talked about how they got there, why they're going to stay there, and why they're going to be successful there. So I want to thank you both for allowing me to come on here and talk about the things that are going to keep you there, get you there, and hopefully help you get somebody else there.
So thank you to the listeners out there. Thank you, Travis. I know Isaac and I are humbled to be here, grateful to have you on. If you have any questions about the program, you can contact us on social and look up Noble Path Ventures, and you can find us, and you can subscribe on any podcast app. So just want to thank everybody, and I hope everyone has a great day. Travis, thanks again, man.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah.
All right.